The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
I'm one of the people on staff at the A3 Library. You may know me from the other building. Today's program, 10 Things I Learned on the Camino, will be led by Deacon Chris Beukman. Chris has long job titles.
Long and confusing, yes.
He is the Archdeacon for Deployment and Pastoral Care for the Episcopal Diocese of Massachusetts. And, if that weren't enough, he is also the parochial deacon for Bristol Trinity Church here in Northeast, right up the road. Lincoln Street is where they're meeting.
In the Lutheran Church, yeah.
Okay. So please join me in giving him a warm welcome. We're all looking forward to his program.
It's great to be here. Welcome, everybody. Good crowd. I was hoping for thunderstorms and rain, but you know, it's beautiful out there and you're here, so it's terrific. Couple of things. This presentation is actually sponsored by Bristol Trinity Episcopal Church, which is right up the street. They're meeting in the Lutheran Church. If you happen to be shopping for a church, check them out sometime. They're a wonderful and loving and devout group of people. So it's an honor to be working them. I've been there for about a year or so. We're also on ECAT, so welcome all the folks who are watching on ECAT. I don't know exactly when it's going to be aired, but you'll figure that out. And if you missed something, then you can try that out. A little poll. How many of you have seen The Way with Martin Sheen? All right, if you haven't seen that, that's probably a movie, The Way, with Martin Sheen. And I believe it's on Netflix, right? Yes. Yeah? That gives you a really good idea of what happens on the Camino. And the story is a touching one about a father who hears that his son actually was lost on the Camino. He goes to France to pick up his belongings, and on an impulse, he decides to walk it himself and has a very profound experience on that Camino. So if you haven't seen that, it gives you a really good sense of what it's like. How many of you actually have walked the Camino? You guys have been to Santiago, you told me, right? But, yeah. On the bus, sure. Yes, yeah. It's a bit of a walk, but it's worth it. I have to say, I'm like full of excitement about presenting this today because I just came back from Spain 2 weeks ago. My story is that I did the Camino 3 years ago from the French side of the Pyrenees in France across to the city of Logroño in Spain, which is in wine country. Then I took a train from Logroño to a city called León, which is in Castilla, and then I walked the last piece to Santiago. Since I had missed the middle part, it's called the Meseta, it's kind of like a desert-like landscape. I really wanted to go back, so just before Labor Day, I went back to Spain, walked about 200 miles, that middle stretch, and then from León took a train back to Santiago, so the second time. The other exciting news is, and I haven't told anybody at the church, but Lucy and I actually are invited to go to Santiago in April, where we'll be chaplains for Casa Anglicana, which is our Anglican retreat house in Santiago, welcoming people and helping them process the experience. So I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. While I'm talking, I will pass down two objects. One is the famous St. Jacob's shell. Virtually everybody on the Camino carries this shell. And the reason that this is the symbol of the Camino is that pilgrims, in order to prove that they had been on the Camino, would pick up a shell from the beaches of Galicia, which is the province of Spain where Santiago is. It's a little bit like Ireland. They have a Celtic culture. They would pick up a shell like this and bring it home to prove that they had been there. So everybody is on their backpack has one of these shells. I'll pass that around. And the other fun object to pass around is my beloved credential. So this is so much fun. So when you go on the Camino, you get a credential, and every bar, every restaurant, every church, every inn, every hotel, every shelter has a stamp. So you just collect stamps, and that actually proves how much you have walked. Even the cops, they have a special police force in the Guardia Civil that patrols up and down because they want to keep there's been some weird things that's happened. So the Guardia Civil actually patrols the stretch of the Camino, and they will also give you a stamp. They're really nice guys. They're not as scary as they look. So every day you get a couple of stamps, and that actually proves where you have walked. So enjoy that. It also has a wonderful map of all the different Caminos, hundreds of them really, that come together in Santiago. So on that note, I want to start with a couple of facts. The Camino that I walked is called the Camino Frances, the French Camino. As I said, there's like hundreds of them. It's a 778 5-kilometer path. Hello. It's a lot of walking. From a place in France called, on the Pyrenees, called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is in Basque country, in the French Pyrenees, to Santiago in Galicia, the Celtic province of Spain. As I said, there are many other Caminos. So I did about 270 kilometers in 2022. As I said, from Saint-Jean to Logroño and from León to Santiago. And then just last September, I went back to finish the middle part. The reason that people go to Santiago, quite simply, I don't know if I really believe this, but it's a nice myth, is that St. James, who was one of the apostles of Jesus, after Jesus' death, went to Spain and preached the gospel there. And he is believed to be buried in Santiago. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but the reason that pilgrims 1,200 years ago started going to Santiago is to visit the grave of St. James, and you'll meet him in about a second. There's a book called the Codex Calixtinus from the 12th century that actually, it's kind of like a tourist guide. It describes the way, exactly the way it's walked with. Actually, the same stops that pilgrims are using today. And we believe that pilgrims have walked from their homes anywhere in Europe or in the Americas or in Asia to Santiago since the 9th century. That's 12th century people. So you're walking on a path where people have tread your footsteps 1,200 years ago. And that's an incredible feeling. I'll say more about that for a while. It's a great community. They're mostly Europeans, although I met some lovely people from Colorado. I met a lovely young woman from Idaho, a lovely couple from California. It's quite a number of Americans, but mostly Europeans of all different nations. Lots of Koreans for some reason. And since all the Europeans are happily commingled, it's actually believed that the idea of a European Union, the way we have it now, came about by pilgrims walking the Camino together and realized that even though they were Italian and German and Dutch and French and Spanish, that they weren't so different. So it's a real feeling of unity when you walk that. So my presentation is called 10 Things I Learned on the Camino, because you may have noticed this. As you walk, your mind clears in a miraculous way. One of the great teachers of the church, St. Augustine, once said, in ambulando solvitur, in walking, things get resolved. And you may have had the experience when you have a difficult problem that you're struggling with, and you're sitting down talking about it, doesn't work. You go on a walk and your mind clears. Have you had that experience? It's miraculous. So you get a lot of insights while you're walking, and I wanted to share simply with you some of those insights. Here's our friend, St. James. Actually, in the first church that I right into this September. And he is decked out as a pilgrim. You recognize his shell. You recognize his sombrero. It gets really, really hot, so you need a really good hat. And you recognize his staff. I had 2 walking sticks. Without this, I couldn't have done it. They're great on the uphills because you just push yourself up. And they're great on the downhills because they're hard on your knees. So you push back. He has his stick there. And then he has his little gourd with wine. I'll say a little bit more about wine. Wine is very important on the Camino. And that's why people say, no vino, no Camino. So there's our friend St. James. And then with that, it's time to start the journey. My backpack is the 4th one from the left, incidentally, and my sticks. So you start in France, on the Pyrenees. This is the hardest stretch of the whole trip. So unfortunately, the first day of the Camino is the hardest. And because I'm a chicken, I actually took another route that kind of goes into Spain round way. But if you go right up in the mountain, it's very, very steep, and it usually takes 2 days. That's Basque country in France. It's a very strange language. You know, all the signs have lots of Q's and X's, and I didn't understand any of it. So you walk through France till you get to all the way over there. You have to get up that pass. I thought I was avoiding the steep part, but the second day I had to get up to the same pass as other people do, and it was hard work. And then eventually you come to a place called Navarra, which is a province of Spain. It's very green, it's very prosperous, and it's very beautiful. And as you progress, you get into a province called Rioja, which is Spanish wine country. Any Spanish wine lovers here? Oh yeah, Vino Tinto, right? I'm talking a lot about wine today. So these vineyards are just beautiful. Then you cross the border into Castilla, which is a little poorer and very dry. You end up in this area called the Meseta, which is a dry, hot plain. And even walking in September last month, there were a couple of pretty hot days. However, they have these beautiful canals, and fortunately on this stretch, the Camino went by the canal, so you got some wonderful cool air coming off that canal. And then slowly you make your way through Castilla and Leon into Galicia, which is where Santiago is, and it's the Celtic part of Spain. Actually, when you round the corner to the cathedral in Santiago, the first thing you see is a bagpipe player. That's your welcome. They play the bagpipes for you. I think I might have a picture of him. So you walk and you walk and you walk. You're in Galicia, crossing that bridge. If you want to keep on walking, some people walk beyond Santiago to a town called Finisterre, which means the end of the world. It's about a 3-day walk beyond that. There's this lighthouse in the end, and that's the very end of the path. I guess if you sit there on a clear day, hello there, how are you? On a clear day, I guess you can see Boston because you're right across. I guess you're right across the ocean from there. Hey guys, come on in. And that's mile 0. I think I have a picture of it. So here's 10 things I learned. Let's take a break for a second. Come say there's a chair. There's 2 chairs here. There's a chair in the middle there. Patty and Eugene, welcome. And there's one here next to Lucy too. Hi, how are you? So these insights. One trick is to not get discouraged. You know that feeling that you're taking on a large project and it feels overwhelming. And that really the only way to make it manageable and to cut it down is to take it in small steps. So believe it or not, this is the first thing you see after you cross the Pyrenees. So you've knocked yourself out, you're over this mountain, and then you see the sound and say, oh, only 790 kilometers to go. Ugh. That's like 650 miles. So don't get discouraged if you're in a big project. Break it down. To give you an idea, the stages of the Camino vary between 13 and 20 miles a day. I thought it was a lot, so I actually did some training even in the summer. Here in Boston, we have this wonderful bike path that we love called the East Bay, between Bristol Rhode Island and Providence. So I did that one with the backpack. The backpack was about 15 pounds, 16 pounds. And I was like a broken man after that. I couldn't walk for about a week, so I wondered how is it going to be. So the first day was a 27-kilometer stage. That's up there. So I split it in 2 days. And then I kind of worked up to a comfortable pace of doing 13 miles a day, 20 kilometers a day. And then there were a couple of 20-mile stages, 30-kilometer stages. And it wasn't easy. I got a blister, but you do it. So my insight was that if you have a difficult, demanding task, you break it up in small stages, and eventually it whittles down to where you are. But this is how you find your way. There's all these, there's either yellow arrows everywhere. You can't get lost. Well, I did get lost, but but there's yellow arrows everywhere, and then there are these stones that direct you and will tell you your distance from Santiago. Here are all the different, now it's 167 kilometers, and then you reach, this is in Finisterre, you reach that point where it says kilometer 0 times 0, 0, 0, and that's a good feeling, you've made it. So my insight there is that overwhelming tasks can be broken down in little pieces, and they become less overwhelming. The second one, this for me was a powerful one, and it's, if you're in any club or organization or church for that matter, it's really an interesting learning point, asking yourself, are we all moving in the same direction? I noticed, I think it was the second day, I was still in France, and I noticed that people were all moving in. I never met somebody coming the other way. Well, just once. Not too many people do Santiago to wherever. A lot of people go to Santiago. So you're all moving in the same direction. And it's an amazingly powerful feeling that you're walking with all these people. Incidentally, today, last year, 500,000 people, 500,000 people walked this path. So you're walking with a number of people who all become friends, and you're all going in the same direction. It's a very, very powerful feeling. That would be a great stick on the Camino, by the way. So ask yourself, if you're part of a group or a church or a club or a family, are we moving in the same direction? Because you are, it becomes this powerful, I guess, synergy that you feel that you all have the same goal. The result is that you always see people from the back, interestingly enough. This is, again, in Saint-Jean, Pied de Port. They actually put a little tile in with the direction going in the right direction. That's your first step. So I put my foot. That's after you take this first step, you're on the way. And what you see, by the way, there's statues everywhere. And the statues connect you with the people who have gone before, which is very artistic and also moving and beautiful. Even the statues move in the same direction. Every pilgrim you meet, you see them on their back. You see them moving west towards Santiago. And it gives this feeling of incredible unity and togetherness. You see how they're always moving in the same direction. On a rainy day, by the way, with those little covers. Always moving in the same direction. Always seeing them from the back. Going across, this is in Astorgas, going across the railroad tracks. Going across a bridge in Galicia, they're always moving in the same direction. One of the most moving statues, there's lots of statues in every city, but one of the most moving statues I find is on Mount Gozo, which means Mount Joy, 4 kilometers before you hit Santiago. And it's a statue of, emotional, of people rejoicing over seeing the city for the first time. And when I arrived there in 22, it had been raining quite a bit of the way, and the sun came out that day, and there was this beautiful rainbow over the city, and it was amazing. And this is, Lucy, where I want to go with you over there, this statue. So then you reach your goal. Obey the way. It sounds a little severe, but these pilgrims that have walked this path 12 centuries are all a little smarter than I am. And I'm pretty stubborn, as the people of the church know. And I sometimes thought I would go the other way. And I quickly learned that it makes sense to follow the arrows and stay on your path and not improvise And I remember 2 times, I remember there being at this one point where the path went up very, very steep, and I thought, this is going to be fun. And I climbed a couple of steps, and a couple of pilgrims called me over and said, no, not that way, this way. And it was more flat, so I was happy about that. If this is a path that's been walked for 12 centuries, it makes actually sense to stay on the path. You don't improvise on the Camino. Sometimes there are alternative paths, and they're very clearly marked. But you don't say, well, let me try to go left here where it says right. That gets you in trouble. This is, for instance, a place where you have a variation. So there are variations in the path sometimes. Again, the pilgrims moving in the same direction. This is actually interesting. This is another project I want to do. You see where it says Shikoku 88? There is a pilgrimage in Japan called the Shikoku 88 temples, where you can also walk a path to 88 Buddhist temples. And if the church sponsors me, I think I'm going to do this. No pressure. So you stay true to the path. This is that same, I find it such a moving statue. These people that are just rejoicing over seeing Santiago for the first time. I've talked about this a little bit. This is the only person I met that went the other way with his horse. He was in the paper, he was very famous. He had his horse with him. He actually came back from Santiago. But when you're on Santiago, the trick is to feel the spirit of those people who have gone before. And for 12 centuries, that's a lot of people. In the church, we call this the communion of saints. And in our church and in Christian churches, we believe that when we worship, it's not just us who are there, but it's also all the people of faith who came before, and also all the ones who are going to come after us. And you feel that very strongly on the Camino. You feel that people have gone there before, and now you become one of them, because you're walking just as this person 100 years ago, or maybe 1,000 years ago, was walking. So you feel the presence of those who come before and come after. Again, the statues, this is so nice. In every city, the bigger cities, these statues reinforce the idea because they symbolize that people have gone before, and there's lots of these statues. This is in Pamplona, which is one of my favorite cities on the road. The thirst and that backpack gets a pound heavier every mile you walk for some reason, so it can be stressful. So the statues help remind you of the people who have gone before. Walking with a little suitcase, can you imagine that? Yeah. So maybe that shadow there is somebody, I don't know, who's come before. Maybe it's just me. Beautiful statues. This is one in Finisterre, on the ocean, of somebody huddled against the cold. It's a beautiful statue, I think, too. This is hard to talk about. Not everybody makes it, unfortunately. So there are people actually who die on the Camino. And occasionally you come by memorials of people who have not made it, and you stop for a moment and keep me in your prayers and pray for their families, because not everybody has the health and the stamina to do it. So that's very powerful to come across. It's kind of like driving on a highway where there's been an accident. Very powerful to stop. This man was from Belgium, and I don't know what happened, but there are quite a number of places that are marked with people who unfortunately didn't make it. So that was a pretty sobering part. I love to call this objects are larger than they appear. So if you're, again, in a project or in a club or you're in a church and you're trying to accomplish something, we have a tendency, I think, to look only at one. Welcome. A couple of chairs up here. We have a tendency to only look at part of the picture. So if you look at this, you say, oh, there's a nice little chapel across the hill there. I'll maybe go visit that, and all you see is that little chapel. But it's not a chapel, it's actually a whole city. And the hill takes your view of the whole city. So when we attack certain problems, it's very easy to get caught in the details. But stepping back and looking across helps you really get the whole picture. That was an insight that came to me. So this guy was surprised to see me, I guess. Prepare to be surprised, and lots of blessings. In September, what struck me is that I met a lot of people who wanted to bless me, and that was okay with me. Just before you go up to the desert area, there's a little chapel. And there was this woman in her 80s, so moving. I think she was a religious nun. And first you get your stamp. Then she wanted to give me a religious medal. I'm not big on religious medals, but he did that. And then she wanted to bless me, and she did. And tears streamed down my face. It was a powerful moment. And then there were many other. I used to go to a lot of masses. Don't tell Father John this, okay? And so after Mass, it's in Spanish, so I can't really follow what's going on. But after Mass, the priest calls up all the pilgrims and says, where are you from? And you get their blessing. So you get blessed a lot when you're there. Surprises. We're talking about surprises. I didn't expect, for instance, to be running with the bulls in Pamplona. As a matter of fact, I didn't. But I had this really fun tour guide in Pamplona. You know about the running of the bulls, right?
They're real, right?
No, they're not. No. They're not.
I'm saying, you're crazy. Yeah.
No, she finally noticed, yeah. So I had this really fun tour guide in Pamplona who took me to this tourist shop, and they had all these huge, they're stuffed bulls. Mm-hmm. And then he said, you go lie down. You go, and then you send this picture to your family and tell them you're not coming back. So I didn't expect to be gored by a bull in Pamplona. I also didn't expect to meet my good friend Ernest Hemingway. I don't know if you know, but Hemingway was a big figure in Pamplona. He spent a lot of time there. He loved bullfighting, and I don't know if he had a house there, but he spent a lot of time there. So I didn't expect to meet up with Ernest. So we had a nice talk. I had a few suggestions. I said, how about a couple of sequels? A Farewell to Legs, maybe. The Moon Also Rises. Have you thought about this? So Ernest and I had a nice discussion. And another huge surprise, after I did the Camino in 22, I went back to Holland where I grew up, and then to Austria where my niece has a hotel that she's running. And I stopped somewhere at a monastery that interested me, and it turned out to be on the Austrian Camino. So you can't get away from it. Some other beings were on their way to Santiago. This one's going to take a while. I think his ETA is maybe in 2030 or something, but he's bringing his house. And this was spring when I first walked, so lots of little salamanders. They all seem to be on their own Camino. Now this was a big surprise. You go up the path a little bit and you come to this fountain and you expect to find nice water, but it's actually a wine fountain. Not a bad deal. Huh? So you hold out your little bottle and you fill it with wine. That was a very nice surprise. Right is water, left is wine, just for those. That was it. That was a big surprise for me.
Did that water get turned into wine? Is that what
I tried, but it didn't work. I have to be a deacon a little bit longer, I think. You know? That's a good question. Sometimes people give you feedback, and it also happened to me in September, and it's a very interesting process. So this is not how you wear your backpack. By the way, this is when I left Logan and my family dropped me off. It's like way too low. These backpacks now, they have these wonderful hip belts. So you put it on, you go like this, you get the thing way up on your hips, and then you tighten it. So it's riding on your hips rather than here it's hanging from my back. Massive back pain. So in 22, I was walking with a couple of Dutch friends, and they said, well, it's none of our business, but you're not wearing your backpack right. And they made some adjustments and making it much higher, so this whole thing is above your head, actually. And then it's much more comfortable when you can move. Also, I had a moving encounter with a Korean pilgrim, and of course, a lot of them don't speak the language at all. But we were climbing a mountain together. He stopped me. He couldn't say any word, but he kind of looked me up and down. And he spent 10 minutes adjusting straps here and there. And then he kind of tapped me on the back and say, you can go now, you're good. But, the care that is, and, it's not always too easy to accept feedback, right? When people stop you and say you're doing things wrong. But the trick is to be humble enough to accept that feedback and to learn from it. So that happened to me twice, actually. Off I go. Refreshment. One of the best things if you're walking 13 to 20 miles a day is putting your feet in cold water. It feels so good. So there was a fountain here that I put my feet in it, that your feet kind of come back to life. I think I had a blister in September. I didn't expect it, but one of those 20-mile days. I think I ran out of Vaseline that you gave me, Lucy. I'm sorry. Doing your laundry, I learned how to say the lavanderia in Spanish, so I would ask lavanderia. Doing your clothes is very important for renewal. And of course, this being Spain, they feed you pretty well. Tapas, right? So all these little bites, really good beer. It's a little tapas place.
Yeah.
Well, that was just like in a grocery store.
When you had a sandwich that took over the plate. Keep going to, that one.
Yeah, that was a good sized tapas. Yeah. In Pamplona, they call those pincos for some reason, pinchos. So they feed you well, or just to sit, and enjoy the beauty and the quiet. I had a recorder with me, so every once in a while I would just sit and play music for a while, and that was very relaxing for me. They feed you well. Great pizza. Or a nice, usually I would walk like 2 hours, get up maybe 6:30 before the sun's up, walk about 2 hours and then have breakfast. And they feed you well. The little cappuccino there with a croissant. And of course, vino. Because as you all know, without vino, there's no Camino. Santiago, they're really big on desserts in Santiago, by the way. So you have lots of these stores that have all this sweet stuff, really good stuff. So you have to take care of body, mind, and spirit as you go along your journey. Makes sense. And really good beer. So now this is moving to talk about too. People take a stone with them on the Camino. Everybody does. It's a tradition. And the stone represents a particular burden that you're carrying. So I didn't have a stone because I didn't go to Cruz de Ferro this time, but 3 years ago, Lucy and I had a wonderful Dutch friend who was a physician who died, about 3 years ago maybe? And I brought a stone with me. So the stone, of course, is an extra burden, but you do it, not a big stone. And then about 3/4 of your way, you come to this place called Cruz de Ferro, the Iron Cross. And at Cruz de Ferro, you deposit your stone, and symbolically, you leave your burden behind. This is 12 centuries of stones. So for 12 centuries, people with whatever burden or grief that they had came here and put their stone down, and this is the collect of it. If you climb it, you're like 12 feet high. So it's a very powerful place. We had a mass there also with a Catholic priest, and I got to read the gospel. That's what deacons do, by the way, as you well know. So you leave your burdens behind. People also put flags and all kind of memories. It's called Cruz de Ferro. A lot of kindness and hospitality on the Camino, and I think for us it's always important to practice kindness and hospitality. I had one particularly not so great day leaving the city of Pamplona, and it was like an industrial area. It was not fun. It smelled bad. It was just factories. And I come around the corner, and there is Juan, and Juan's going to take care of you. And you have your coffee. Do you see the shells that he's not selling but giving away? You have wonderful fruit and soft drinks. Do you want money? Well, if you have money, you can give me money, but it's not necessary. And people do this out of the goodness of their own hearts. The Spanish, they just set up these roadside stands, and they take care of pilgrims. It's just amazing. Where else do you find that? Also, my friend had 4 words. What was it again? Good morning, thank you, hello, goodbye, and cheers in every language of every pilgrim that came by. So you could say, where are you from? And then you could say that in all these languages as a way of hospitality. So everywhere you have these little stands where people just take care of you. Just an amazing feeling. Because you're such a wonderful audience, when I came back 2 weeks ago in September, I decided to add an 11th insight that has to do with feeling the joy of community. I have to say, 3 years ago I was probably in a different place. I felt lonely a lot. I didn't relate to a lot. I walked by myself a lot. For some reason, I just met wonderful friends on this Camino. I think the reason is that I moved as a group together without skipping apart. So I always saw the same people on the Camino, and it became this joyous, really wonderful community. My friend, he was a 5-star chef in the big hotels and restaurants in Europe. Till he lost his eyesight, he was my landlord in a wonderful town called Castro Jerez. So I felt the joy of community with him. Oh, my Irish friend. what a trip. So the second day there, I met Liam from Dublin. He was an ex-cop. He was with the Garda in Ireland. And he was like the social director of our whole cohort. So people would come up to me and say, "Oh, you're the deacon from Boston who speaks Dutch also." And I said, "How do you know?" Liam told us. So Liam knew everybody, and everybody knew Liam. He was a fantastic guy. The second night, I had rented this apartment, and it was a 2-bedroom. So I invited Liam to use the other bedroom in exchange for a meal. So we had paella, and we were just fast friends from there. I invited him. I hope I told you this, but I invited him and his wife to come visit us. So just an amazing guy. And Liam was everywhere and knew everybody. There were some Dutch people, and it was a lot of fun for me to speak Dutch with this guy, Edwin, for instance. A lot of people, are maybe not as inhibited as they might be in real life, so people tell their life stories. Edwin told me about his stint with the United Nations force in Lebanon, where he served with UNIFIL, and coming under fire from our good friends in the Hezbollah and being kind of traumatized by that. So normally probably it's not something he wouldn't share, but we had a real deep conversation about it. This lovely couple from Arizona, she was also an ex-cop. And they just came over, and I had met them several times. We were not that close, but they said, "Well, I want to be sure to take your picture with us before we go home." So it was so moving. German friends that I met on the way. And then, you turn the corner, and then there it is, the cathedral in Santiago. You probably know that there are a lot of quaint rituals connected to entering the cathedral. I didn't do this, but when you enter, you put your hand on the side of the door. That's done for 12 centuries, so it's actually a hole now. You can put your hand in the hole. You can hug the statue of St. James if you want to, but the tradition that you've probably seen is called the Boto Fumero. It's that huge incense thing have you seen that? That they swing back and forth. Mm-hmm. It's like a thurible, as we would say in the Episcopal Church. But it's a thurible that weighs like 100 pounds. And there are 6 guys. You get invited if you're a pilgrim. There's 6 guys that hoist it up and down, and it swings through the cathedral. It's quite amazing. I hope nobody gets hit with it, because it's like a truck coming down. So that's the cathedral in Santiago. At the end, you get your... this is a fun story too. You go to after you visit a cathedral and put your hand on St. James, all this stuff, you go to the pilgrim's office and you get a certificate in Latin that you completed. The fun thing is that they always ask you, what's the reason that you did your Camino? And you can say either for physical reasons or for spiritual reasons. And being a good deacon, of course, I said for spiritual reasons. Then you get the real certificate. Yeah. If you say for physical reasons or to lose weight, you get a certificate that essentially says in Latin, "God help this poor slob who didn't quite understand himself why he watched the Camino." So I got the right certificate. Again, that wonderful view in Finisterre when it's all over. This is my first credential that Lucy actually put on the glass for me. So we have it at home. I just really cherish it. And to end with a prayer. This is from the Codex Callistinus, that tour guide from the 12th century, where it says, "God, you called your servant Abraham from Ur in Chaldea, watching over him in all his wanderings, and guided the Hebrew people as they crossed the desert. Guard these your children, who for the love of your name make a pilgrimage to Compostela, be their companion on the way, their guide at the crossroads, their strength in weariness, their defense in dangers, their shelter on the path, their shade in the heat, their light in darkness, their comfort in discouragement, and the firmness of their intentions, that through your guidance they may arrive safely at the end of their journey, and enriched by grace and virtue, may return to their homes with salutary and lasting joy. So I think that's a wonderful prayer. Thanks for listening. So we did like 40 minutes. I wanted to thank the library for being here. When I came into this building yesterday, I could not believe how beautiful it is. And if you haven't been here before, see the building. The bookshop is really nice, and also the beautiful gardens around here. Before we go to cheese and crackers, let's have a little dialogue, a discussion. What was your response to my presentation?
Did you really hydrate on wine all that walking?
Did I get high on wine?
Did you hydrate?
Hydrate.
I'm so fixated on this one. Yeah, it's very important to hydrate, especially in the meseta, the middle high plain, because you hit a stretch where there are very few villages. So I had a pretty good, my bottle, maybe 3/4 of a liter. I had a pretty good bottle, but you have to be careful that you don't hit a stretch and run out of water. In September, it was okay. If you do it in July or August, it can be dangerous. So, yeah. And then people are kind to you. So, in every town and village, there's usually a fountain with drinkable water, so you can fill up there. And also, all the little stores sell bottled water. So, yeah, but sometimes it's hard to stay hydrated. On the sunny days, if you're walking all day without a break, yeah, you do hydrate pretty quickly.
And the wine doesn't slow you down?
Well, the wine comes at the end of the day. It helps the vino.
How many miles was it each way?
Well, I didn't do
You
both
did
ways.
one.
I just
Oh,
did
okay,
one way.
One way.
So in kilometers, it's 781, and it comes to about 650 miles, I think, 600 miles. Yeah. So it's it takes a lot of stamina to hang in there. I cheated a lot. I cheated 3 times with taxis when it got a little bit too rough. Don't tell anybody that. Okay. That's our secret.
Thank you for your presentation. It was wonderful to listen to. I have a practical question. You mentioned that you carried 15 pounds. You were able to take everything you needed, and it was only 15 pounds?
Yeah, so you have to be very selective. I carried next to nothing. But the interesting thing is that everybody does their own Camino. If you don't want to carry your backpack, there's luggage service that you can take from into, and I'll say something more about overnights too. There's luggage service, so you don't really have to carry everything. And there's also a lot of people who do guided tours. It sounds like yours was a little bit like that, who maybe sit in the bus for a couple of hours, they get dropped off, they walk for a couple of hours, and then go to a hotel. So there's all kind of ways of doing it. I'll tell you a little bit more about overnights. The first time I walked, there were 2 or 3 nights when I ended up in a dormitory. That was not for me. I happened to be assigned to the dormitory with the dudes who don't wash their socks. So it was not a pleasant experience, and they snored. So basically I was up till like 4:30 in the morning listening to people snoring. So that didn't work for me. So I ended up staying and usually making reservations in advance at very small inns or hotels, just having a single room. And that way, I don't want to arrive after walking 20 miles in a town and not know where I'm sleeping, and people saying, well, there's a hotel in the next town, so I want to know where I'm sleeping. So I usually would reserve through Booking. This is a plug for Booking.com, which is a great website. So usually I had an okay hotel. The way the days work out, it's usually by 2 or 3 your day's over. So you get to take a shower and a siesta, and then you find your friends and have dinner and all that stuff. So there's all kind of ways to it. You can make it as comfortable for yourself as you want. There's also a lot of people who bike it. And there's also 2 ways of doing it. Some people bike on the actual path. It looked rough to me. I'm a biker, but it looked rough. And some people just bike on the road beside where the Camino leads. So there's all different ways of doing it.
Did you pre-plan your accommodations or?
Yeah, so I made, before I left, just before Labor Day, I had worked it out for about half of the Camino, till about the city of Burgos, which is kind of the middle part. And then I started to plan out day by day. But then there are certain, and it can be nice. There was one day I was pretty tired, and I made a reservation next time, so I probably had another 8 kilometers to go. And there was this little inn called La Morena, and they had a bar and a restaurant, and it just seemed so nice. So I learned that in Spanish, you ask for a habitación, which is a room, not for a cama. If you ask for a cama, you get put in the dormitory with the smelly socks. But if you ask for a habitación, you get a room. So I asked the waitress if she had a habitación, and she did. It wasn't very clean, but it was all right for the night. And then they served a communal meal, which was delightful. So I gave up my reservation. It's like a small loss, you know. And then more towards the end of the Camino, I became a little bit more loose about not reserving and just kind of seeing what was available. In the off season, July and August, you might have a hard time. In September, you usually, find a place. Sorry.
Did you go alone?
Yes, I did. Yeah, but you never feel alone.
No.
Because people catch up with you and tell you their life stories.
And how many days did it take you to walk the distance?
Well, the first time it took me about 30 days, and this last time about 20, I would say. So I took it pretty slow.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you another story about people, how people are and how people tell you their life story. I don't go very fast, so a lot of people catch up with me. This French woman caught up with me, and we got to talking. In the course of talking, she described how her husband had died of cancer 10 years ago, that she now had diagnosed. It was stage 4, it was incurable. When she learned this, she said, I'm going to walk towards Santiago. Either I'll die before I get there, I'll die there, or I'll die afterwards, but I'm just going to walk. And that's all she did for the rest of her life. But people sharing that, I mean, I was crying half of the time. I did love crying too. Beside the wine. Maybe it was the wine, I don't know. Thanks for asking, that's a great question.
Did you wear your collar?
No, that's a good question, actually. So when we're chaplains in Santiago, I'll have to wear my collar. But, I wasn't there for a liturgical purpose. And 3 years ago, the only time when I was asked to read the gospel, everybody was in their street clothes, so it didn't seem appropriate, so I didn't even bring a collar. Yeah?
We hear so much about so many places in Europe being overcrowded. Did you feel it was very crowded?
Yeah, it gets a little crazy. And especially because there's a new rule now with the credential, which is around somewhere, that if you want to do only the last 100 miles, you start in a place in Galicia called Sarria. And then you have 5 or 6 nights till you get to Santiago. So a ton of people did that. And when I hit Sarria, it was like a totally different ballgame. You literally had to kind of make your way through the crowd on the path. And lots and lots of people there. That wasn't always pleasant. Lots of like walking clubs, especially from the UK. So this might interest the people of Bristol. I had a very interesting conversation with this Frenchman when this was playing out and we had so many people. And I was being a little snobbish, and I said to him, I had seen him from the beginning. So I said, you and I are the real pros. We're not like these stupid tourists that begin the last 100 miles and still get the certificate. He looked at me and said, have you ever read this parable in the gospel about the workers in the vineyards? I said, yeah, I think I know. He said, the workers who arrived early and the ones who arrived in the middle of the day and the ones who arrived late, and they all got paid the same. That's here. So I felt really humbled by that. The guy knew his gospels. Yeah, great questions, by the way, great dialogue.
When you got to the place where you left your stone, what was the atmosphere there? Was it very like release, or was it happiness?
It was somber, I would say. You could see that people had carried a lot of burdens. It meant a lot, even though it was a Catholic Eucharist. It meant a lot to celebrate the Eucharist there, actually, and to actually be a deacon there. It so happens that one of the toughest parts after Cruz de Ferro, you get a 5-hour relentless descent, and the descents are the hardest. So I didn't know what I was in for, so it was nice to be there, but I didn't realize what came afterwards. Descents are really hard, because you feel it in your knees, you know. Yeah,
Where
great.
were you a deacon?
Sorry?
Where are you a deacon?
Bristol Trinity?
Bristol Trinity, the place to worship in Easton. Go check it out sometime. Bristol Trinity and St. John's Franklin. Wonderful, wonderful communities. Faithful people.
Was the downgrade like rocky?
Yeah. I just actually learned that after you hit the Pyrenees, the third day, not only is it old, that's another old downhill day, but there is a certain kind of slate and it's grooved downward. So you're always sliding and it was pouring. And when it's wet, it's awful. They actually, I just read, they put a bulldozer to that whole thing and redid it. So there's a little bit more traction. So yeah, those descents are really hard. But as I said, the walking sticks help to break the impact. Also, your knees would be killing you. But the walking sticks help to, and then of course there's rolling gravel. So once you're on a rolling gravel, you kind of go downhill pretty quickly. So. Great questions.
And the walking sticks, did you take them with you?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because you have that collapsible, right? If
Yeah.
you take them with?
My understanding was that was not allowed. I went on Iberia,
Okay.
and I didn't even want to test it out. So when I got to Logroño by train, they have, what's that store called? It's a sporting store. We used to have one in Norwood. Anyway, I went to a sporting store and bought a set. And then when I went in Santiago at our retreat house, I gave them and my Swiss Army knife to the desk and say if there's pilgrims who need stuff, then. So I left them over there. Great questions.
You can't take your Swiss Army. You can't. Did you buy your Swiss Army knife there as well?
Yeah, you have to kind of have a knife because the reason being that it's fun to have dinner with friends, but occasionally you're so tired that the other alternative is just to go into a store and get a little cheese. And they're very big on ham. Everything is jambon. So you get a ham, a piece of cheese, and a piece of bread, and then you just make your own dinner. I did that quite a number of nights. It's cheap. By the way, this costs next to nothing if you're not a person of means. If you're willing to sleep in dormitories, it's either free or €10 a night. So there's a lot of what's called donativos, where they say, how much do you want to give? And you can give nothing. Or you give $10. So you spend $10 on your overnight and then maybe 15 on food. So you can do this for €25 a day.
Where do you sleep? Where?
So I end up sleeping in
You
long.
said it costs nothing to do that.
If you sleep in a dormitory, then it's either nothing or €10.
Right.
But it's not very pleasant. What's the last time you slept in a dormitory? And when you come over the hills, when you come over the mountains in the Pyrenees, in the first town in Spain called Roncesvalles, you have no choice. There's only a dormitory. And I slept in this monastery dormitory with like 600 people. It was not fun. It was not fun. In one of those bunk bed deals, you know.
Yeah.
It's not good if you want to get out at night. Great questions.
Are you paying everything with credit card or?
Yeah, so they've really caught up on the what's it called, the touchless credit cards. So my routine, I'll tell you exactly. After 2 hours walking, would go into a bar. It was always the same. 2 double espressos. It gives you a kick in the rear. They have these juice machines there called it's called Zumo de Naranja, where they press juice, so always a juice and maybe a couple of eggs. Touchless credit card, works in most places. I carried maybe €100 just for other, incidents. And sometimes in the countryside, they didn't take credit cards, but most people even had the touchless, so it was very easy to pay for things.
Were the dormitories co-ed, and how about safety on the train?
Oh, great question. They are all co-ed, so that's something to kind of get used to. That can be a little awkward. There have been some incidents, especially of people exposing themselves, and this is where the Guardia Civil comes in. So it's kind of interesting because I don't know if you know the history. The Guardia Civil has a terrible reputation all the way going back to Franco. I don't know if you know that story, but they were like Franco's secret police. They've kind of rehabbed a little bit. There is a branch now of the Guardia Civil that's specifically assigned to touring and patrolling the Camino. And not only are they very nice and they help you out, but they also keep an eye out for things. So
about your packing after you finished your first trip?
Oh, I left a lot of stuff behind, you know. It must have been close to 20 pounds. And I had a sleeping bag, which you don't really need, especially if you're staying in little hotels. I had a very heavy kind of fleece thing that I left. And I had two of these, much bigger than these, two gigantic water bottles. And you only really need one. So every time I stopped, I ended up dumping more stuff. Then it was more like 15 pounds, you know.
But what did you forget the first time?
Oh, another great question. Shoes, second pair of shoes. So what you don't want to do is, I had these, they're Keens, you've seen those, right? Really great hiking shoes. But you don't want to, after you've taken your shower and your siesta, you don't want to put your hiking boots back on when you're going to town. So my son, God bless him, gave me a pair of, what do you call those clogs?
Clocks?
Those plastic clogs.
Crocs.
Crocs, yeah, he gave me a pair of Crocs. And those were great. So that gives your feet kind of a break. So those were, so I didn't have those the first time. Another great question.
And there's a lot of resources out there, you know, I don't know, you would have experience, but like, you know, the internet, Facebook, tons of books around, like, you know, people will just weigh in on what they found to be really helpful as far as what they packed and what they didn't pack, and, you know, just in case you ever want other resources.
Yeah, there's lots of discussion online about what to bring and what not to bring and how to get the numbers down. There is I don't know if I'm online. There is, what's his guy's name again? There's a British guy who wrote like the ultimate guide to the Camino. Can't think, John, can't think of his name right now. But everybody was carrying it, and it's both a spiritual guide and a travel guide. So it not only tells you where to turn and what, especially your elevations. That's really important to know when you start the day what your elevations are going to be. But it has also beautiful, John Brierley, I'm sorry. That's kind of like the ultimate guide of the Camino. But he also gives little mini meditations for each day, which are really beautiful, actually. He died recently, John Brierley. So most people have that Brierley guide with them. There's also a couple of good apps. I liked Camino Ninja is really good. So that also, they're really good on accommodations. So they also help me with accommodations. And Google Maps, of course, if you really get lost.
Can you use your cell phone most of the way?
I did in Spain, yeah. Yeah, I had a plan that worked in Spain. It's, I don't know, what do I have? T-Mobile. And I didn't make any calls, but the data you need. Yeah, the data you need a lot for navigation, but unfortunately the bit rates are a little bit low, so you get a lot of false directions on Google Maps. So that's not so pleasant. Yeah, it's better to ask locals, I think.
What's next?
Japan, I think. Well, a couple of things. Lucy and I are going to go to Santiago in April, and we're going to be chaplains for Casa Anglicana, the Anglican Retreat House. I do want to do, Lucia and I were also in Portugal in June. We went to Porto, so I do want to do the Porto through the Camino stretch. And then I'm very interested in the Japan thing. There's the Shikoku, which goes back to a Buddhist monk, but it's also called something called the Kimano Kodo. And they actually give a joint certificate with the Camino. So you can get a Camino Kodo certificate. I'm kind of interested in that. So I think I'll be talking to the treasury of the church very soon. She happens to be here, so. Great questions. Wow, it's fun.
What's the distance in the Portuguese?
Not long. It's 12 to 13 days. And there's something wonderful called the spiritual variant. So you can choose a variant that ends you up on the shore of a beautiful lake in Spain once you cross the border. And then you can take a beautiful boat trip across the lake that almost brings you to Santiago. So it's an easier trip. When we were in Porto, I met some Finnish pilgrims that were just beginning. I visited the cathedral there, and sure enough, there's the yellow arrows. They point you right out. So.
Did you have any recovery time? I mean, did you need recovery time?
Yeah, I did 1 0 day in Burgos. That was kind of like the middle. But it's funny, like your body gets used to walking every day. So waking up in the morning, your feet start going like this, like, it's time to move. I said, no, it's a 0 day. And it's hard to do it. You get a little restless when you don't walk. For those of you who follow your steps, 40,000 steps a day, occasionally. So yeah, it's up there.
Very good.
So thank you for listening. What a fun crowd. If you haven't seen it, watch The Way. Yeah. There's a couple of really good books. Do you know the title of the book that you liked?
It was written by a woman, and when Chris went the first time, and we'd speak every day, I would write down little notes, and I could there's a map, so I could really.
Yeah, you were following me on the map.
And the second time, he made me a calendar, so I wrote down things that he would just probably forget. But yeah, I don't. But it was a woman, and I remember a little about her story that she, she was a mother. She had a job, and she suddenly just really wanted to let everything go and do this trip. Just out of the blue. She wasn't a hiker or anything. It was very important to her.
Shirley MacLaine has written a book about it. I'm not a big Shirley MacLaine fan, but there it is. Paul Coelho, do you know him? Yeah, he's written a book about it too. So there's a lot out there. So much fun to talk about this. Thank you so much. I think we're going to go, unless there's other questions. Yeah.
What was the oldest person you came across?
Oh, I love that question. A couple of people in their 90s, but I remember very moving 3 years ago, especially on that stretch from Sarria to Santiago. I met a woman who looked in her mid-90s, who was going with a walker with 2 nurses on either side, like a step at a time. I don't know if she did a kilometer a day, but she did it. And to see that kind of devotion and determination, I found it very, very moving. So you see people are really, have real difficulty getting along, just walking along, that nevertheless have the motivation to do it. So.
Is the diocese going to sponsor an El Camino walk?
Oh, good idea. Great idea. And the place, there is an organization called the American Friends of the Camino. They have a wonderful Boston chapter, and my friend Joe Curro, who is also Episcopalian, is the head of that. It turns out that I called him while I was in Santiago, and he was there. It was really weird. It would be, we'd have to cooperate with the friends, American Friends of the Camino. I think it's a great idea. Great idea. A lot of people in the diocese that have done it, I think. Yeah. Fun questions, great discussion. Are we going to go on to cheese and crackers? I'm sorry I didn't bring any. Where's the? I know. Yes, let's work on that. Yeah. Well, thanks for listening. and